The check-in ping was due at 0300 station time. By 0600, I had logged 3 missed windows and opened a formal monitoring record. By noon of the second day, I had stopped expecting it. That is how it works when a fleet crosses into human space. Not with a battle, not with a distress burst. With silence, clean, total, and immediate, as though someone on the far side had simply reached out and turned a dial to 0. My name is Cale Droveth. For 19 years, I served as senior signals analyst at Vethera Station, the last manned outpost on the inner rim of the Sorrhan corridor. 18 light months from the boundary, the charts mark with 2 words: approach not advised. I was there when the Vothran Compact sent 40 warships through that boundary in what Fleet Command called a Punit expedition. I was the one watching the receivers when the last of those 40 ships stopped transmitting. I have been asked to explain what I know. Explain what I know. I will not explain everything. The fleet crossed at 0214 on the 14th of year of Compact 7840. I know the exact time because I was the one who logged the boundary transit confirmation. 40 individual ship transponders, each blinking in sequence as they pass the last navigation marker we maintain on the Compact side. 40 green lights on my board. I remember thinking they looked like a string of signal lamps hung across a window, orderly and bright, proud. Fleet Commander Rathak Osun had requested a comm channel stay open for the first 72 hours of transit. Standard for a deep incursion. I maintained that channel. I kept it live and clean and monitored it personally for every one of those 72 hours. I did not sleep. My subordinate, a junior analyst named Verith, offered to take shifts. I told him to go rest. I wanted to be the one listening. By hour 14, the last transponder had gone dark. Not damage dark, not power failure dark. The way a room goes dark when whoever is inside closes the curtains. Deliberate, quiet. Final. Command sent a relay drone at hour 40. The drone crossed the boundary, broadcast the recall signal on all registered frequencies, and waited 12 minutes for a response. It returned with nothing. I logged it. I wrote my notation in the flattest language I could manage. No signal response received. Relay drone returned, monitoring continues, and I submitted it up the chain. Then, I sat back in my chair and looked at the 40 dead transponder indicators on my board for a very long time. There is a thing that happens when you work signals long enough. You develop an instinct for the quality of silence. Some silences are equipment failure. Some are interference from a dense mass between the transmitter and you. Some are operator error, a wrong frequency, a miskeyed code, a transmitter left in standby. Those silences have a texture. They feel accidental. They feel like something that will resolve itself when someone on the other end notices the mistake and corrects it. The silence from the Sorrhan corridor did not feel like any of those. It felt finished. Command waited 30 days before formally closing the monitoring record. I submitted 14 daily logs in that time, each one identical in substance. No signal received, no debris field detected, no emergency buoy registered. 40 ships, 11,000 crew, 2 months of provisions and ordnance, and the corridor gave back nothing. Not a hull fragment, not a recovery beacon, not a single automated distress ping from any of the 40 emergency systems that are supposed to be impossible to silence without a direct physical override of each individual unit. I have thought about that detail more than any other. 11,000 emergency beacons. Each one requires a manual, hands-on override to silence. Silenced, all of them. The Compact's inquiry board convened 4 months later. I gave testimony. I answered every question put to me in precise technical language, and I volunteered nothing beyond what was asked. When the inquiry chair asked me whether I had any theory as to what had happened to Fleet Commander Osun's expedition, told him that signals analysis was my discipline, and I had recorded what the signals showed, and that any theory beyond the signals was outside my competence to offer. He seemed satisfied with that. He was asking the wrong question. The right question, the one no one on the inquiry board had the file clearance to ask, was not what happened to the 40 ships. The right question was what happened 22 years before that, when a different fleet, smaller, sent across the same boundary as an exploratory contact mission, produced the only return signal Vethera Station ever received from inside human space. I was a junior analyst then. 26 years old, second year at the station, still learning which silences were technical and which were something else. The contact mission crossed on a clear morning. 9 ships, lighter armed than a punitive fleet. Science and diplomatic compliment. The Compact's formal request for a dialogue channel. They crossed. They went quiet. That part was familiar even then. Even to me so early in my career, because there had been others before them. We had learned not to expect pings. What we had not learned to expect was what came back. On the 43rd day of the contact mission's silence, hat 11 station time, the primary receiver bank at Vethara station picked up a clean, uncompressed, unencrypted signal originating from deep inside human space. It was not a transponder ping. It was not a distress burst. It was a directed transmission, aimed at Vethara station specifically, on our primary monitoring frequency, is not published and is not accessible through any channel the contact mission would have shared with whatever they encountered out there. 6 words, in compact standard, perfectly grammatical, correctly formatted. No static, no lag, no distortion. My supervisor that morning was a 20-year veteran named Adrith Corell. I had never seen him rattled by anything. I had watched him process a mass casualty notification from a border skirmish without changing his expression. When I flagged the incoming signal and he leaned over my shoulder and read the 6 words on my screen, he said nothing for almost a full minute. Then he straightened up and walked to the window that faced the corridor, went and stood there with his back to me, looking at the dark. He told me to flag the transmission classified. He told me to note in the record that the receiver bank had experienced a calibration anomaly during the relevant window and that the reading was spurious. He told me to go off shift and sleep. I flagged it classified. I noted the calibration anomaly. Went off shift. 3 days later, the receiver banks at Vethara Station were formally reoriented by order of Fleet Communications Command. The adjustment was described in the maintenance log as a routine upgrade to eliminate a known interference pattern from the sorrhan corridors. Magnetic field drift. The receivers were pointed 11 degrees off the bearing they had held for the previous 14 years. 11 degrees. Enough to leave a blind spot exactly wide enough to cover the origin point of the signal. Adrith Corell filed for early retirement within the month. I saw him once more before he left, in the corridor outside the signals room, carrying a small personal case, not in uniform. He looked at me the way a man looks at someone he has decided not to warn, because the warning is too large to carry in a hallway conversation, and the corridor is too short anyway. Then he walked past me and I never saw him again. I have the 6 words memorized. I will not write them here. What I will tell you is what they meant, not what they said, what they meant. The distinction matters. They were not a threat. They were not a boast. They were not an ultimatum of any kind the Compact's diplomatic lexicon has a classification for. They were an answer, a specific, correct, precise answer to the contact mission's opening diplomatic query, which I pulled from the mission's own sealed transmission log to compare. The contact mission had asked, in formal compact diplomatic phrasing, whether the intelligence on the far side of the boundary was willing to receive an envoy. The 6 words were the answer to that question. The answer was not no. The answer was not yes. The answer told whoever received it exactly what it would cost, and exactly what the cost would produce, and exactly what would happen to anyone who sent the envoy regardless of whether they went or stayed. In 6 words. In perfect compact standard. On a classified frequency that no diplomatic contact mission should have had any way to pass along. Adrith Corell retired. The receivers were turned away. The inquiry board, 22 years later, asked the wrong questions and closed the file. I have worked signals for 31 years. I know the quality of silences. The sorrhan corridor is not silent because the ships went in and did not come back. The corridors of the Compact's memory are not silent because we lost a fleet, or 2 fleets, or 11,000 crew. They are silent because something in there answered. It waited 43 days, and then it answered, carefully in our language, on our frequency, in 6 words that a 20-year veteran read once, and then walked to a window and stood there with his back to the room. I will not say what the 6 words were. I will say only this: they were the right 6 words. Whatever is on the far side of that boundary, chose them the way you choose a lock for a door You do not want opened, and it shows correctly. The receivers have been pointed away for 22 years. I intend to leave them that way.